AD, very important and tragic event happens. What is it?
John dies?
No?
Fire with Rome? Rome fire?
The what now?
Fire with Rome?
The fire of Rome. Which historians call the Great Fire of Rome. 3/4 of the city, Rome burns. For 6.5 days, there was a fire going, burning houses in Rome. A little over 3/4 of the city burned to the ground. Anybody remember the emperor at the time? Famous Roman emperor.
Nero.
Nero, for all the wrong reasons, yeah, Nero. And word gets out that Nero started the fire, or a second rumor that went around that Nero played his fiddle to the while the city burned. That cannot be, because he didn't play a fiddle, he played a different instrument. Well, I forget what instrument he played, but when he played it, he had mandatory concerts, and if you were royalty, you had to go, you know, you had to sacrifice your ears to go listen to him. But anyways, but what does this have to do with Christians? The fire of Rome and Nero.
Wasn't there a guy that took the burning, he was told that it was done for the Christians, not against them, and he got confused?
What happened is Nero needed to blame someone for the fire because he was getting blamed. So he blamed the Christians. The way he did it is he would round up Christians, torture them until they said another Christian did it. Well, once he had a couple other Christians tortured and accusing others, or get their slaves to torture them to say that the Christian did it, once he had tortured confessions from people, then he said they're all guilty, all the Christians did it. And every Christian he could find, he put to death. All right, that's how he did it. Which was a common way for dictators, and still is to this day, to get confessions. You torture a person until they say what you want. That goes on in the modern world. That's Nero. That's what Nero did. And of course, his character, he had his mother murdered someone to get him on the throne. I think her husband. She was, yeah, it was a stepson. He was the stepson, and she got her husband to agree to put the stepson Nero on the throne instead of her own son. Then she had him secretly put to death, and they argue about who actually did that. And then Nero's on the throne. Then Nero had his mother put to death, his wife put to death. He chopped his wife's head off, gave it to his girlfriend. Then years later, he had, in a fit of rage, he kicked his pregnant girlfriend to death. Then he commits suicide. Yeah. And this guy is ruling the world. The shocking thing is when Paul talks in Romans about paying your taxes, you know who you're paying them to? Nero! Who put Paul and Peter to death the next 3 years. That's your next one. Oh, man, it's unbelievable. During this period, Peter and Paul, best we know from historical records, Peter and Paul were put to death both in Rome. Paul, because he was a Roman citizen, was beheaded. Peter, because he was not a Roman citizen, was crucified. Church history says that Peter did not want the honor of being crucified like his Lord. He said, please crucify me upside down. And they said, yes, we will. And I don't know if it's true or not, but the record we have is that they took it 3 days for him to die, and he spent the 3 days preaching on the cross upside down. Oh. Anyways.
Who did this to Peter and Paul?
Peter and Paul were both put to death during this period.
By Nero.
By Nero, yeah. During the persecution that Nero started. And what it began, what we call, is imperial persecution. He's the first emperor to order the persecution of Christians. The problem is there were a lot of crazy Roman emperors that did weird things. You kind of get them mixed up after a while. But Nero, he stood out from the crowd. Let's just say his character was very consistent. All right. So, from there, well, I'm trying to move on a little quickly here. 70 AD. Another tragic event. What happens in 70 AD?
Death of John.
What's that again, David?
Death of John the Baptist.
No.
Jerusalem burns?
Jerusalem was destroyed, yes, by Titus of Rome. Titus was actually serving under his father, but his father was called back to Rome, and Titus finished the job, if you will. So Titus destroyed the city of Rome, set the temple on fire, then tore the temple apart because the inside walls of the temple were made of wood coated with gold. And he wanted all the gold. So after the fire, he pulled all the stone pieces apart to scrape all the gold off. So it was leveled. And this was a prophecy of Jesus, that not one stone would be left upon another. So when Jesus is being carried to the cross in 30 AD, he's predicting what's going to happen in 70 AD. And he says to the women, he says, don't cry for me, cry for you and your children. So he saw it was going to happen. Those, and if you remember, we talked about this, those who believed in Messiah Jesus were told, they remember Jesus' prophecy, when you see the city of Jerusalem surrounded, flee. Because you can't flee when the city is surrounded. But in 68 or 67 AD, the Jews rebelled. A general was sent from Caesarea. He surrounds the city, realizes he does not have enough food supplies to sustain a siege, and brings the troops back to Caesarea. He's killed along the way. The city was surrounded. Jesus said to do what?
Flee.
Flee. So when the general left, they fled. They left and started a Christian community on the other side of the Jordan River. Then comes a bigger army headed by Titus and his father in 70 AD, and they destroy the city. So those who believed and took heed to Jesus' prophecy were spared from the destruction of Jerusalem. But the city was destroyed, the temple was destroyed, and it has never been rebuilt. You can visit the foundation of the temple, now called the Wailing Wall. I've done that. You've seen pictures of it, Jerusalem. But that was just, the temple was on a hillside, so you had to level it out with a foundation. And that's the Temple Mount, which is still there. And on top of that Temple Mount is the Dome of the Rock. It's a Muslim mosque, the oldest Muslim mosque in the world. Okay? Of course, there's going to be a temple rebuilt there in the future. So we think either it's going to be built right next to the mosque. I don't know, that would be war. Somehow that mosque is going to be destroyed. Pastor Handel's preference is that one of those missiles sent from the Gaza Strip towards Jerusalem gets through the Iron Dome system and hits the mosque. Blows it up, and the Jews say, act of God, we're going to build a temple now. When I was in Jerusalem, 2 bombs did come in, and we had 60 seconds to go hide somewhere. We were in a Catholic church. We hid in the basement. It was in bedrock. When I got up, the first thing I did is, did they get the rock? Did they get the dome of the rock? Oh. Why didn't they hit it? Oh, it could have been here for history. Oh, well, anyways. You have to visit and hope they hit it while I'm there. Anyways. Oh, it got me in big trouble certain places. This will put on YouTube. Anyways. Okay, anyway.
I'll have to edit.
Yeah. Oh. All right. You got a little extra history in there. But these things, you know, these dates are not just, they're not unimportant dates. They're very significant. Also, in the temple was the record of Jewish genealogies. So if you were going to prove you were the Messiah and a direct descendant from David, you better be the Messiah before the Jerusalem temple was destroyed and the records that were in it. Such a record existed when Jesus was born. They could trace his genealogy. Yeah? If you will, if you were going to be an imposter, you would, according to the Daniel timetable, when Christ would come, and because the records were stored, you had to be the Messiah before 70 AD. And he was. How about that? Isn't that interesting? What a coincidence. Right on time. Now, 98 AD.
Death of John.
Death of John, yes. The significance. Mark, can you tell us the significance of John's death in 98 AD?
It was the last of the apostles.
Yes.
Dying.
It ends an age. The age of the apostles is over. So usually we say the age of the apostle ends, usually either you say 98 or about 100 AD. Of course, John is the only one who was not martyred. He died as an old man. Natural causes. So, we've got a new era here. Oh, and what church in Asia Minor represents the age of the apostles while we're on it? In the book of Revelations. Book of Revelation, not plural. Book of Revelation. Which church represents the age of the apostles? Ephesus. Yes. Ephesus. And what does Ephesus mean? You're going to need to know this.
Desire.
What's that?
Desire.
Desired. He's going to be a Bible scholar back there. We'll have you teach us next semester. All right. Once he teaches it, he'll know it really well. By the way, that's why teachers seem so smart. It's easy to learn when you're teaching. Memorizing is hard work, but teaching is the easy way to memorize. So, desired, and a double meaning. It means this is the kind of church that God desired, the apostle, the church of the apostles. There was unity, there was love, there was evangelism, there was sacrificial giving, there was real faith, there were miracles, had it all. It could also mean this, by 100 AD or by 90 AD, what had this church lost?
This first love.
Its first love. So perhaps it means God desired for them to return to their first love. And we said, this does not mean you try to love God more like you used to. This means you return to the state you were first in when you appreciated how much God loved you. And when you realize how much He loves you, you want to love Him. That's first love. He first loved us. Yeah. And when that revelation gets hold of you, now you return to your first love. Okay. So, we're at 100 AD. We're kind of doing things as we go along with the timeline, but that's good. It helps keep you, hopefully help you remember these things. Ooh. Let's take a 10-minute break. Brains on break.